Hey everyone, welcome to the session by Intellipaat. I hope you guys had a beautiful day, and on that note, I welcome you all to this live session where we're going to learn a little bit about SQL and a little bit about database and so much more. Well, before we begin with this session, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you never miss an update from us, guys. So, on that note, let us check out the agenda for today. Well, to begin with, we're going to have a quick introduction to what data actually means, and then we can take a look at what database means. We'll have an introduction to SQL. We'll check out the applications of SQL, and followed by this, we'll check out the basics of how the SQL tables work, and then we'll quickly check out what we call as the CRUD operations using some SQL queries. And I'm going to be practically showing you these CRUD operations, guys. So on that note, this brings us to the first item on the agenda: introduction to data. Well, when we think about data, we live in a world which is surrounded by data, right? So what is data? In my opinion, data can be considered as the facts which are basically related to any object which we are talking about. So, data can be age. Well, age is a data. You can put that in numerics. You can put that in a form where people can take note out of it and make sense out of it, because age can be anything from 0.1 all the way till 100 and much more as well, right? So age is a numeric in which we can gauge something and get something out of. And then if you're thinking about the other forms of data, again we have video data as well, right? So video is what we call as unstructured data. But then if you do not know what unstructured mean, do not worry. At this point you need to know that pretty much video is a form of data as well. And then there are other data as well. When you think about all the data we generate by leaving messages to each other on WhatsApp, or leaving tweets on Twitter, sharing photos on Instagram, or putting some updates on our timelines on Facebook. So all these stuff and lots more is what we call as data, guys. So this brings us to the question, what is a database? You might have heard of data. So if you've heard of database, guys, head to the comments section and put down the comments. As usual, we all love an interactive session, and you guys are very good at it as well, guys. So head to the comments section and put your opinions down. So what is a database? Well, a database is basically nothing but a very systematic collection of data in the most simplest terms. So why would we go about needing the systematic collection of data? Well, it's pretty much to support some sort of storage where we can hold the data, maintain the data, and eventually we can we have to have the ability to manipulate the data in a very easy way, to be honest. So to give you examples of what databases actually are, if you guys remember, when we were a couple of years ago, we used to get these telephone directories where there used to be all the numbers. It's called yellow pages in a couple of countries as well. So that is a very good example of a hard copy of a database. And the contacts option on your mobile phone right now is also a database. Well, then coming to power generation, you might not know, has a huge database of what power is being consumed by what house and whatnot, because again at the end of the day you get billed for the power you use, and this data goes to your local electricity power supply board. And again, this forms a very big database as well, because pretty much they need to know what the power they're generating versus what's being used, and many other details as well, guys. And then coming to social media, as I just told you, uploading images, uploading statuses, uploading stories, whatnot. So all of these are stored in a database in secure data centers, what we call, especially when it comes to social media and the privacy things. So pretty much all of these are stored in the database, and it is stored securely, guys. So basically this brings us to the question, why would we ever go about needing a database? Well, I've pretty much tried to keep this session very simple, and these are the reasons that I can pretty much think of why pretty much we would need a database. The first thing, in my opinion, is that we need a database because managing large amounts of data is a hassle. Because you might say, I can store data in a spreadsheet and it's going to be fine. But then when you think about very large amounts of data, large chunks of data, and throw it all into one sheet and make it work, it might not work, or it might be extremely difficult even if it works, right? So let's say the size of the data increases from a couple of tens of hundreds of records to thousands and millions of records. So when this happens, it will create a huge problem if you're using spreadsheets to maintain this data, and at the end of the day it is going to hurt with respect to efficiency, time and whatnot as well, right? So this is the first point of why you should need a database. And the second thing is the accuracy of the data, because when you think about it, doing data entry pretty much into a spreadsheet sounds very easy, but then it becomes extremely difficult to pretty much track how accurate the data is on the spreadsheet, because at the end of the day, if you cannot have a method where you can validate the spreadsheet to find out if your data is accurate or not, it doesn't make sense. And again, think about this: manual validation of thousands and millions of entries and verification of the same are pretty much near impossible, and even if they were possible, pretty much it brings the efficiency right down to zero, right, in my opinion. So this brings us to the third reason of pretty much why we would need a database, guys. So in my opinion, again, it's the ease of data uploading, because with the database you have very good amount of flexibility to pretty much update the data present, manipulate it, play around with it, create it, delete it, whatever you want at your convenience. So you do not have to wait for the person who created the spreadsheet go through millions of entries and do all of that. So again, the best advantage of a database is that multiple people can edit the data at the same time. This brings up the efficiency and pulls it from 0 to 100, almost 100 in my opinion, guys. So what do you think about the efficiency when it comes to the database technologies of today? Head to the comment section and do let me know. So on that note, this brings us to the next reason why you should consider a database. It is pretty much because of data security, because we do have passwords for spreadsheets and whatnot, but then the data is considered to be less secure, and it makes it gullible, because everyone can pretty much get access to all of these files. They can do some changes, remove whatever they want, or add whatever unnecessary stuff, and it hurts the data at the end of the day. But then with databases, pretty much you can have something called as security groups, privilege accesses, and so much more. So at the end of the day, here you can pretty much restrict access to a certain number of people, certain people with the privilege to access the data, manipulate the data and whatnot. So your data will be in good hands at the end of the day. So what does that mean? Well, adding on to that, this brings us to the next point, which is data integrity. Data integrity is one of the big questions today when we are storing data in spreadsheets as well as databases, because again, we've already spoken about how data can be gullible when we've put it in spreadsheets, but then when you put it in a database, you are assured of accuracy. Number one thing, it is extremely efficient. Number two, and number three, your data is consistent, because multiple database service providers today pretty much go about giving you very good integrity checks, very good access controls, privilege accesses, member accesses, and so much more. So this brings us to something you might have heard of, or you might have used in college, or you might not know as well. It's called as DBMS. Well, DBMS pretty much means database management system, guys. So what is DBMS? Well, DBMS in the most simplest terms is basically just a collection of programs which enables the user, whoever is using this particular DBMS softwares, to go about accessing a database, creating a database, manipulating the data, deleting the data. So basically this gives the user an interface where he or she can talk to the database and pretty much work with the database, edit the database, delete the database, and do whatever the person wishes to if he has the right access. And this basically gives the person a very good interface, guys. So I have 3 facts for you with respect to the database management systems. And the first thing is that DBMS is not a new concept. It was first implemented pretty much in 1960. So that is how old a database management system is. And then when you can think about it, the person who pretty much gave us the first DBMS system pretty much is called as Charles Bachman. And his IDS is considered to be the first DBMS. IDS is basically integrated data store, is what Mr. Charles chose to call his first DBMS machine, guys. And then the third important fact is that today we know that the database technologies have evolved so much, and all of the functionalities have been given, and these functionalities increase every quarter, every year, every month. And then the database systems today are so powerful, it drives millions and millions of gigabytes of data every single day. Yes, millions and millions every single day, guys. I can say millions of millions as well, because the world, the entire world is basically a big data problem. So having a place where we can handle all of these, store all of these, and manipulate all of these is always a blessing, guys. So this brings us quickly to the introduction to SQL. Well, So what is SQL? Well, SQL is one of the standard languages we use when we go on about dealing with relational databases, which can be used to create, read, update, and delete database records, guys. So these are some of the operations we can perform. So what does SQL stands for? Well, SQL is simple. It stands for Structured Query Language, guys. You're going to find out why we call it the query language in just a moment. But then you read the term relational databases. So what is a relational database? Well, a relational database is basically just a type of database that stores and provides accesses to all the data points which are related to one another. Well, how are these data related to one another, guys? So basically, when we call it a relational database, there has to be some relation with respect to the data. Using SQL and all the DBMS, we call it the RDBMS because it's relational database management systems. Here we have the data organized in tables, which you'll see in just a second, and then we map the data so that the database knows what's important and what's not, and we do this using something called as keys. Well, keys such as primary keys, candidate keys, secondary keys, all of these provide relation between one column of the data to the other column of the data, guys. You'll see all of this in a couple of moments. But then coming to a little bit more about relational databases. Well, relational databases are pretty much based on what we call as a relational model, where we pretty much map one concept to another, the other concept is mapped to another, and we have this interdependency, interrelationships which are built throughout the data, guys. And then this makes it very intuitive and extremely straightforward. Pretty much it gives us a very straightforward way of representing the data in the form of tables, as I just mentioned. And then the other good thing about the relational database, as I already told you, is that each row has something called as a record, and there is some unique ID called as key as well. Again, we're going to check all of these in the upcoming slides. And then we have something called as columns, which any data table will have. And then these columns basically hold all of the data, and each record in this column basically is mapped onto a unique thing. And then we go on about establishing something called as interdependency relationships and much more among all of the data present, guys. And if you're wondering how SQL is pronounced, it is pronounced as either SQL or it's called SQL, guys. Pretty much you will find developers, enthusiasts, and many others either calling it SQL or SQL. So whenever you heard of the term, whenever you hear the term SQL, make sure to map it into SQL, guys. It's pretty much simple and straightforward. So coming to a little bit more about relational databases, there are some flavors of SQL that I thought I should tell you guys. Well, here are some of the examples of relational databases. We have MySQL, we have Oracle SQL, we have Microsoft SQL, we have Sybase, and we have many more flavors of SQL as well. The subtle differences in between all of these providers are pretty much in the form of syntaxes of how we pretty much talk to the database. And there are some proprietary syntaxes as well, where the syntax only works with Microsoft SQL Server, and it might not work with MySQL and so on. But then it is recommended for all the beginners to pretty much go on to start with MySQL, and then pretty much jumping to any of these other providers, other flavors of SQL, it becomes very easy if you're a master of MySQL, guys. And on that note, make sure you stick till the end of the video, where as usual I'm going to give you a very attractive offer just for the viewers of this particular video, where you can fast track your way to becoming a MySQL expert, guys. So on that note, we need to quickly check out what a query looks like. So a query is something very simple. It is the actual, let's say, the code we write, guys, in terms of SQL. Well, a query will look something like this. Think about you entering this in a shell or in a particular workbench, guys. So we have something called a select star from data 1, where age is less than 20. If you know a little bit of SQL, I'm sorry. So if you know a little bit of SQL, then pretty much you can make sense out of this. But then if you do not worry, because I'm going to walk you through what each of these mean. Well, so basically we're going to be viewing a lot of data present in the database, right? So select statement is pretty much used to pick data from the actual servers and then show it to us. Star pretty much means that, show everything that is present. Everything from where? Well, everything from a particular database that we have. And that database in this particular name is called as data 1. And so do you want to just see everything from data 1? Well, no, I want to see some stuff from data 1 where the age of a person, let's say we are talking about a table which contains details about a lot of human beings or college people, school people and whatnot. So we just want to find out who all are less than the age of 20. So when you think about it, instead of just seeing millions or thousands of entries of students who are aged various from 3 to 100, but then when you're thinking about efficiency, then we need to bring it down to a certain condition where we go on checking it, right? So instead of just seeing thousands of entries, let us say we only require 11, and we're going to see 11 entries when we put the condition saying age is less than 20, because there are only 11 people who are less than 20 years old, guys. So pretty much this is what a sample SQL query will look like, and we'll just be doing very simple operations at the end. You can follow along, in fact, and pretty much we can check out a little bit more about queries then, guys. But then when you think about it, I'm sure you guys are also curious as well. So there is something called as NoSQL as well. So how can we go on juxtaposing and comparing SQL and NoSQL? Well, when you think about it, the types of databases in SQL, as I just told you, are relational database, where each of the data is mapped to the other by using keys. In terms of NoSQL, we do not have relational. That's why it's called as NoSQL, guys. And then how is the data stored in SQL versus NoSQL? Again, structured data is stored in tables in terms of SQL, and in terms of NoSQL, unstructured data is stored in something what we called as JSON formats and JSON files, basically, guys. So at this point of time, this is pretty much the detail you need to know to get started with SQL, guys. And then coming to online transaction supports, well, pretty much SQL has excellent support when it comes to online transactions, and NoSQL pretty much just has about average online transaction support, guys. When you can think about it, NoSQL sure has its amazing advantages, but then pretty much SQL stumps it in terms of online transaction support. And then coming to database compliance, we have something called as the ACID properties in terms of SQL, and we have something called as cap theorem in terms of NoSQL, guys. So we pretty much have an entire in-depth video of MySQL where we train you on everything from the basics all the way to a level of to an advanced level, and it's about it's on our YouTube channel. So make sure to check it out if you want to know more about all of these data storage techniques, ACID properties, and much more, guys. So on that note, this brings us to the applications of SQL. So SQL has a couple of applications, and let me tell you one by one. SQL can be used as a data definition language, DDL for short. What this basically means is that you can pretty much create a database on your own, define its structure on your own, use it on your own, and just discard it when you're done with it. So this doesn't have to be just you. This can be among hundreds and thousands of people. You can scale it, obviously, but then know that with respect to data definition language, you have all the right where you can individually create a database, define the structure, and delete it when you're done with it as well, guys. And this brings us to the next application, which is data manipulation language, because SQL can be used as DML as well. So what it basically means is that when we have something already in establishment, like data which is already present in our database, we need to go on changing something in that database. We need to update a database, we need to delete a row, we need to update a column, and so much more. So in that particular case, we can use SQL as a data manipulation language, where you can pretty much alter stuff in the table. You can go on adding, removing, and whatnot. So this brings us to the next application, which is the DCL, guys, data control language. So data control language is mainly concerned with your data in terms of how you can avoid corruption and how you can avoid misuse as well. So pretty much, as you know, data has to be protected, and misusing data is extremely easy, even though with all the security measures these days. So SQL can pretty much be used in terms of DCL, where we can protect the databases against corruption and misuse in a very good way as well, guys. And the next application of SQL is pretty much that it can go on to be used as a very good client server language. You can pretty much program on the client side and the server side, where you can connect front ends and back ends together, where we have an entire architecture which is set up what we call as the client server architecture, where there is one server, and then there are lots of clients. I'm sorry about that. There's lots of clients, connected to that particular server, and then we pretty much, go on querying and talking to the server, getting the details from the server for each individual client, and more, guys. So the next application pretty much is what we call as the three-tier architecture. The three-tier architecture is something very similar to the client server client architecture, where pretty much we have something called as an application server, we have a database, and all of these together in terms of the server, the client, and the database form the three basic tier architectures, guys. So it's the client, it's a server and the database where the data is present, and it can go through the server where it can go to multiple machines, or pretty much you can have it come to the server and talk to the client directly as well, guys. So on that note, what do you guys think about the applications of SQL? Can you think about any direct applications of SQL? If you can think of it, make sure to head to the comment section right now. Give me 10 seconds. I'll just grab a quick cup of water and be right back. So yeah, I love the pretty much I love how the comment section is blowing up, so keep it coming, guys. On that note, pretty much we can check out the basics of SQL tables really quickly, guys. Well, as I've already told you, let's have a quick recap. A table is basically a database object which is comprised of rows and columns in SQL. We already saw that it is the structured way of going about using data, a table. And then it can also be defined as the collection of related data held in a table. It is related by the forms of keys, which I told you. But then there are two things that I really want you guys to visualize, which is basically fields and records. Well, fields are very simple, guys. Fields are the column where we have specific data under that. Well, consider the snapshot I have given in your screen. We have a field called as e_salary. Let's say it's employee salary, and this salary pretty much is the information which we provide. But then we have one header under which the salaries are all quoted, right? So this basically is the salary field. This entire column is what we call as a field. And then when we come to records is something very simple, because what is the record corresponding to a particular field? Well, let's say we want the record of the employee name Annie. Here Annie pretty much goes on to be the employee ID 3. It's under the employee name. We searched it through the employee name, right? So we said we want to find out Annie. So Annie is pretty much the employee's name, and the employee's name was the field, and the record was number 3, right? So it's pretty simple. Records give us an entire description, a complete information of all the entities present in that particular data set, guys. So we already have a lot of data on the screen, but then when we highlight one row, the Annie's row, pretty much this row gives us the complete information about that particular employee, guys. So this is what we call as a record. Let me quickly step back where you can see fields again. So this is the field, guys. The field is the column, the record is a single entity which gives us complete information. I hope I was clear with that. So this brings us quickly to the data types which are present in SQL, guys. So I will not go in depth because we need to keep this tutorial to the scope of all the viewers present tonight with our session. So basically know that you can have numerical data, character data, date and time data, and much more. With respect to numeric data, we can have integer data, decimal data, and all of these as well. So basically what you have on your screen is a data type, but with the corresponding range of the numbers that you can use. So you can see a big number there which is 922337203654775 right? So this one particular number, if in case you want to put in a number, say you want to put a phone number, you want to put an address or whatever it is, and you need this amount of number, the huge number, then you go on to use the data type what we call as the big int, guys. Then the normal integer supports pretty much in the data range that you can see on the screen. A small int is a fairly smaller number, somewhere around 32,000, and tiny int is even smaller, where it only supports positive numbers between 0 and 255, guys. And then with decimals, I usually have a huge number, access to huge numbers on the negative side and on the positive side as well, guys. So this brings us to characters. There are three main data types. One is the char, one is the varchar, and the text. Again, pretty much it is as simple. At this point of time, you need to know that you can have 255 characters at once when you're declaring something, when you're declaring the name of a data type, or when you're putting in the actual data for the data type as well, guys. So but then we have something called as text, where let's say you want to put in a description of something. So this it will be a limit if we actually say 255 characters, right? So for that particular case, the standard SQL manufacturers pretty much have given us a range of 65,535 characters, where you can pretty much, I think that should suffice most of the applications where we're using the data type text, where we are actually putting out some sort of description, guys. And then this brings us to the date time data type. Well, basically you can go on to using date format in the format year, month, day, and then you can go on to use the time as well, time in terms of hours, minutes and seconds as shown on your screen. And we can just use the data type year by showing by seeing the format on your screen as well, guys. So y pretty much means 4 numbers. If you have to put it down right now, it's 2019, it's 2019, so that'll be the format of the year for now, guys. So this brings us to something what we call as CRUD operations. CRUD operations is where we'll actually check out some quick SQL queries but first you need to know what CRUD stands for, guys. So every time you begin to learn SQL, or you're revising SQL, or you need to understand what SQL is, you will begin with CRUD operations as your first practical hands-on, guys. And that's the reason I have chosen this particular thing to show it to you guys. C in CRUD stands for create, R stands for read, U stands for update, and D stands for delete, guys. So these are some of the operations we can perform on a database. So we can perform a create operation, we can create something on the database, we can read stuff from the database, we can update the database, and eventually delete the database as well, guys. You can eventually, not just the database, you can create tables, delete tables, read tables, update tables, and so much more as well, guys. So on that note, what can SQL do? We're talking a lot about, SQL can do this, SQL can do that. But then if you have to put everything under one header, this is what I would say, guys. SQL can execute queries in a database, it can retrieve data, it can insert the record into a database, update the records, delete basically the CRUD operations. It can create new databases, create new tables, and then we have something called as stored procedure, which is basically like a ready set of commands. All you have to do is, pretty much just run that stored procedure, and it will run lots and lots of commands for you at once. And let's say you're a huge organization, you do not want to type queries every single time, and there are thousands and thousands of lines of queries. So a stored procedure is basically a saved file where you just run it, and it runs all of these thousands of lines of queries for you to pick whatever data you're looking for in a database, guys. So it's basically like a shortcut. And then SQL can create views as well. Views are these temporary entities where, let's say our table contains 1,000 rows, where we don't want to see 1,000 rows or 1,000 columns, in fact. So we just want to see 3 columns and 3 entries. So in that case, we create something called as a view, where we only pick these stuff that we want to see, and then we show it on the screen. It's as simple as that, guys. And then coming to permissions, as we already told you, it offers very good security measures, and we can set any permission for any person accessing the any client accessing the database on tables, procedures, views, and so much more, guys. So this quickly brings us to our CRUD operations demo. Well, let me quickly jump into MySQL Workbench. So MySQL Workbench, again, this comes completely with the SQL Server installed. It gives you a workbench, it gives you a platform to basically write your queries, guys. So I've pretty much written down a couple of sample queries for you guys to just take a look at and work with. And let me work with you on every single line of query that we've pretty much written. So the first query says create database demo. This line is fairly simple because you can pretty much, it's a very high level language, right? So we're creating a database entity and we are calling our database as demo. This particular name is extremely important because you're going to be using it a lot, guys. So the first step is to create a database, and let me quickly run this query, and as you can see, our database has been created now. So we just created one database and we left it there. So think of it as a box where you just close something in a box and put it next to you. So unless you actually open that box and start using stuff, it won't make sense, right? So then we actually use the query which is use demo. Demo is, again, it's basically use followed by the name of the database. So use demo will pretty much open that database box for us where we can work with it on the inside, guys. And the next query is something very simple where our database is again a plain entity, right? So we need to create some tables there. So in this particular demo, I'm going to create one table for you guys using this very simple syntax. So the actual syntax to begin with creating a table is create table. The table name in my particular case is test. Well, you can have it anything that you want, and we're going to open a bracket where whatever command we put in this particular as a parameter needs to be under this parentheses, guys. So as you can see, I have highlighted one and it highlights the other one for me. So whatever from here till here pretty much goes on, it goes on under the create table header, guys. So I have created 3 columns for my database. One is the name. It's a ware. It means it's a character. Name is a character, right? I cannot have name as 2 and 3 and whatnot. And then we have age. Age is pretty much the integer, as we pretty much can go on using. We don't have to use short int, long int, tiny int and all of that, because again, we know pretty much if you're going to work with a human age, it's going to be somewhere between 0 and maximum 100 or something, right? So int will suffice. And then we have the pretty much if the person is the male or a female and more. So pretty much that again is a single character, so we're gonna use char, varchar, and we can go on using text as well if we want, but then that's a waste of memory, guys. So as soon as I run this particular query, I'm gonna select this query, I'm gonna run it. As soon as I run this, what it does is our database is now created, our table is now created, but then we just created an empty table, so we do not have any data in our table as of now. So to quickly change that, we're going to put in some data into the table. So the command we use to put data into the table is insert into followed by table name and values, and this is the most simple way you can go on to insert a value to your table, guys. So we're gonna have to map it in the way that we have created. So I've created it as name, age, and sex. So basically I need to go on to define name, define age, and define the sex, guys. So the name of this particular entry is Rajesh, his age is 20, and Rajesh is male. And then we have Rohan, who's 18 years old, he's a male as well. Then we have Sneha, who's 22 years old, and she's a female. We have Ananya, who's 19 years old, and she's a female as well, guys. So we can run this query individually where we go on adding one by one. In fact, I'm going to show you that right now. So if I go on to run this query, it says that one row has been affected. It means that you've changed something in one row of your database. So give me 1 second, let me run this for you guys. You can see here, right? So this is the output. Basically this is what we call as a result grid, guys. So here we can see that there is a table created. Basically there's a database created, there's a table inside the database where the name is Rajesh, he's 20 years old, and he's male. So we just used one of these, right? So let me run all of these, and then we're going to run this command select star from test. You might have seen the pretty much the basic SQL query command that I showed you at the start of the session, where we had something more like a where clause and whatnot, right? So we can use that as well, but then this will give us the entire entry present in our table. So as soon as I run this, instead of just Rajesh, all of the all the 4 entities are present for us: Rajesh, Rohan, Sneha, Ananya, and more, guys. So it is pretty much as simple as, let me quickly bring this down a little. Yeah, perfect. So then this command is particularly for MySQL Workbench, where we have something called as a safe mode, and we take away the safe mode to work with the data without having to worry too much about keys, guys. So this is something that you might not have to use all the time, and I just quickly run it to make sure I do not get any warnings or errors up front, guys. So the next command is so we've created since we're doing the CRUD demo, so we are done with the C part where we have created the database, created the table, we have read the data where we use this particular command to pretty much read all the data present in our database, and then we pretty much now are left with U and D, where U is for update, D is for delete, right? So now we're going to update some entry in this table. It's not as easy as double clicking and editing, guys. So you need to put in queries, and that's why we call it a structured query language. And then as you guys can see, it is extremely simple. So let me quickly zoom in a little in case you guys are watching this on your mobile or something. So here is the query for updating it. So update the table name. So it's basically test is our table name, if you can see here, right? So test is our table name. This is the creation command. Test again, where we are inserting the data to which we're already done with. We're printing all of the things that we've already done, and now we're going to update this particular table, and we're going to set age equal to 19. Okay, but whose age are we going to set to be 19, right? So there are 4 people right now. We need to tell our database whose age I want to change to 19. So basically that is where the where clause comes into case. So the where clause says, hey database, update my update my table, set age equal to 19, where name equal to Rohan. So it says find this person called Rohan under the name column and change his particular age, whatever it is, to 19. So Rohan, as you can see in this particular mouse highlight that I have done for you guys, currently is 18 years old. So let's say manually you might have to change ages at the end of the year or for his birthday or whatnot. So as soon as I go ahead and run this command, Rohan will not be 18 years anymore. Rohan will be 19 years old. So let me use the select star from test to print the database out, and as you can see, right, so Rohan is not 18, he's 19. So you can change all as well. So you can change Rohan's name, you can change his sex if you want, and you can have a lot more. This is a very simple database example, guys. You can have a lot more columns, thousands of entries where you can run complex queries once you are trained to work with SQL as well, guys. So again, as I've said, pretty much my intention here is to just show you the basics and make you guys clear with the fundamentals of the CRUD operations. So now we have updated Rohan's age. Rohan is not 18 anymore. Rohan is 19. And pretty much this brings us to the D operation, which is the delete operation again. So let's say, probably Rohan just, cleared out of college and they decided to drop his name from the database and they do not want his name anymore. So delete from the table name, or table name is test, where name equal to Rohan. So basically I am telling it to wipe this. So as you can see, the mouse highlight and the blue color, I'm just telling my database, you know what, I don't want Rohan or any particular thing associated with Rohan anymore. So as soon as I run this command, you can pretty much see that every time you run the command you have to view it, right? So again, as you can see, I have a lot of select star from tests everywhere present. So as soon as I run this, as you can see, Rohan is not there anymore. We just have Rajesh, Sneha and Ananya, guys. So this pretty much is the most simple way you can go on to performing CRUD operations, in my particular opinion, guys. But then if you have to reuse the same thing, you will come up with one particular error case, which I'll just show you right now. So we are this is a server architecture, right? So our database, which is called demo, and our table called test inside this demo is already present. So if I go ahead and just run this query again to see what happens, it's going to give me an error. It says, hey, I cannot create another database with the name demo because something called as demo already exists. So you're gonna have to change this to demo 1 or 2, whatever. You're gonna have to get into that database, demo 1 or 2, and then you can use the same table name because you're using a different database now, guys. So it's as simple as that. So, and after you have done everything, if you want to delete an entire database, a database can have n number of tables. So if you choose to delete all of them, you can pretty much hit drop database and followed by the database name, and done. It says 1 row affected, your database has been dropped. So whatever we have done until line 26 from now pretty much is deleted, guys. It is as simple as this, and you can understand the query because it is in such a high level syntax that it makes it very simple for beginners to learn, guys. So this brings us to my further learning section, where I advise you guys to pretty much invest in your knowledge, because again, as Benjamin Franklin said it, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest ever, guys. So give that quote another read. And on that note, pretty much, if you guys are interested in in-depth videos on SQL or any technology for that matter, make sure to head to our YouTube channel, where our subject matter experts, software architects and many more people put out content for you guys. And then pretty much, if you're not much of a video person or you prefer reading blogs, we have an entire Intellipaat blog channel set up where pretty much we punch out a lot of very good ranking blogs every day based on the requests we get, and we pretty much tend to cater to all of our learners in all of the domains which are present there as well, guys. So this brings me, as I promised, to the last part of the video, where I guide you through on how you can become a certified SQL expert, guys. So this is Intellipaat's SQL certification training course, and we'll be using Microsoft's SQL Server here as well, guys. So this entire course is pretty much made in collaboration with the people from Microsoft as well. So the key features involves you will get 16 hours of instructor-led training. You will get 16 self-paced videos where you can work with it on your own time. You have 32 hours of exercise and project works. You will get the certification. You will get very good job assistance. You can have a flexible scheduling where let's say you're busy this weekend, or you've picked up a class but then you cannot come to the class and you're busy, or you want to listen to it later. All of that is pretty much supported, guys. All you need to do is hit our support team up on the numbers which I'll just show you, and then pretty much they can help you out with your scheduling and much more as well. And the best part about all of these courses are you get lifetime access and free updates to all of our courses, no matter now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatnot, guys. So pretty much if you decide like 3 years, 4 years from now you want to come back to the SQL course and revisit it, revise it and learn again, you can have the access to do it, and you will be getting the latest one when you're doing it, because we upgrade our courses pretty much whenever new versions come out, or whenever pretty much it's required, because again, training the students, training the learners on the latest technologies and the latest versions are a very important thing. And this brings us to the last important concept, which is our 24/7 lifetime support, which we pretty much try to champion here at Intellipaat, guys. So the course content, pretty much, again, you're going to start with an introduction to SQL, where you'll be learning about SQL, you'll be learning about SQL operators, concepts, very important concepts such as joins, variables and whatnot. You have inner join, outer join, self join, cross join, and so many more, guys. So you will have a deep dive into SQL functions. You have something called as aggregation functions, where you can find out the minimum of something, maximum of something, average of something, and so much more. And then you'll be working with something called as subqueries, where it's a query inside a query, and this is something very complex, and we're gonna make you learn that in the simplest way possible, guys. You will be learning about views, functions, stored procedures, lot about user defined functions, performance optimizations, transact SQL, everything about transact SQL that you pretty much need to know. You're going to be learning about database objects, program, guys. You just have to come to the Intellipaat's website, where you can check out our Microsoft SQL Server pretty much certification training program, where you can get a detailed look at our curriculum, and you can download the curriculum as well, guys. You can get a first hand show of what the projects that you'll be working with, what is the industry, what is the problem statement, highlights, and you will have multiple projects working as well. And if you guys just want to take a look at a sample video before picking the course up, you can pretty much click on the link and you will be directed to our sample video tutorials as well, guys. And after that, pretty much this SQL certification program will help you clear the Microsoft 70, 761 and 70, 762 server certification exams, guys. And at the end of your training, you will be given a certificate which looks like this, guys. We are a Microsoft partner network, and pretty much, again, as I told you, this course has been done in collaboration with Microsoft, and this certification is very well recognized in a lot of MNCs like Ericsson, Cisco, Cognizant, Sony, Wipro, Standard Chartered, TCS, Genpact, Tata Communications, and much more, guys. Here are some of the reviews, and you can go on to reading our FAQ section as well, guys. And I'm sure you guys will have more questions than what our FAQ can answer, and in that particular case, you can always hit us up on the numbers which I'll just show you, guys. And then, to keep up my promise to my dear viewers, thank you so much for sticking till the end of the video. Here's the coupon code for you guys. You can go on to use the coupon code YouTube30, which will get you a flat 30% off on all of our courses which are present on the Intellipaat website, guys. So if you're interested in certification, make sure to hit us up on the numbers given on your screen. The Indian number and the US number are present there, guys. You can also shoot us a mail, sales@intellipaat.com. and if you have any queries, any suggestions, any questions, any recommendations, or any course requests, please make sure to hit the comment section right now and do let us know there as well, guys. And again, if you're looking for a course, our course advisors are standing by 24/7, 365 days of the years, pretty much waiting to help out our fellow learners, guys. So on that note, it's been an amazing session. I hope you guys took away a lot from here, and as always, I'm excited to meet you on the next one, guys.